Hello, everybody, and welcome to a GameXplain discussion on Digimon Story Time Stranger, which is coming to PS5, PC, and I think Xbox at the end of this week. And I played a bunch of it, and with me is Zach. Hello, Zach.
Hey there, Don. How are you? I'm excited to talk some Digimon with you.
I am very much interested in that too. For context, I played for the majority of the full game. And yeah, going into it, I mean, what is it first you want to ask me? I mean, I could always give an overview first of what the game is like, but
Yeah, I think a good place to start is what is your experience with the Digimon series as a whole going into it? You know, did you have a lot of experience with the previous games or watch the TV show as a kid? Because it's one of those series that it's always lived in the shadow of some other series, but has kept chugging the whole time in the background. So it'll be interesting to hear your take on what your connection is to the series.
For sure. I think I started with the original TV show and then also Adventure 2. I enjoyed those very much. Tamers was sort of my simmering off point, and afterwards I didn't look at Digimon for a while. Enjoyed, I think, was it the original Digimon World games on
For the PlayStation
1? What? Yeah. So I played those, really enjoyed those. Only played the last Digimon story, so Cyber Sleuth, pretty late. It was a few years out on Switch, and somebody told me to go check it out, which I ended up doing. I really enjoyed it. Also played in between there Digimon Survive, which was a very different game.
Very much.
I must iterate, it was a very different game. And yeah, I was really excited for this game. This game got announced like a long time ago. Like 2017 or something?
There have been rumblings of this game, I think, since 2017, since the last story game came out, but it kind of went dark for a while, and a lot of people thought it got canceled, and then I think it showed up in a state of play last year to a lot of people's surprise, and it's kind of been picking up steam ever since.
Yes. So, for starters, what is this game? Well, it is an RPG, but I think an RPG where it has more meat on the bone than, say, its competitors. I mean, I would say there's a full team of 3, and there's another back row of a team of 3. You can freely miss a match without losing a turn. There's a triangle system, which some attacks are better against other than others, and there's also still elemental systems in there. So there's a lot of layers to it. I think the overall gameplay groove of the battles is like really good.
I completely agree. I love the battle system in this. I think one of the biggest things with the story series as of late is a lot of people have a tendency, just because it's Digimon, to compare it to Pokemon, and I think everyone should erase that from their mind. If there's any series where this is trying to go more towards a JRPG feel, I would say it's closer to something like a Persona. There are a lot of the weakness systems in the triangle system, like you said. There are a lot of ways where you have your team of 3, and there's front rows and back rows that you can sub in. It's a lot more, I guess, traditional JRPG than what you would expect.
For sure. Yeah, and there's also a lot of tools to play with, like you have abilities compared to the Digimon. There is also an interesting way of collecting new Digimon by collecting their data, and if you have enough data, you get access to more. But if you continue collecting data, you get even more powerful options. There's a lot of elements at play here, which makes this game so much fun to interact with.
Completely agree. Honestly, the collecting Digimon is part of my favorite thing of this game. I love how you can take it's not like most other monster catching games where you are just kind of collecting them all. You are constantly evolving and devolving and trying to alter the stats of your Digimon to create new ones through time. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really fun because you can take the original Digimon that you started with, and through
Yeah.
all of the stat changes, you can change it into whatever Digimon you want by the end of the game if you're constantly evolving and de-evolving. It's a really cool way to approach the monster catching game.
Mm-hmm. I also think what I really appreciated about it is how story driven it is, and obviously you didn't have the full scope of this when, for example, looking at the demo. But like the whole time traveling aspect, like a bunch of people will recognize you, but you don't recognize them, and you sort of get behind that mystery of then first flying into the digital world and going back to real life, and sort of going back and forth and putting the pieces together. And that's such a neat back and forth in that story. I think the only thing that sort of gives me pause about it a little bit is that then the player character is basically your blank slate and you're sort of observing it a little bit from a distance. It's not like with other RPGs where you're sort of still part of the story, even though you are basically the player character. I do feel at some moments, and maybe that's my biggest criticism of this game as well. You sort of feel like sometimes in the grand parts of the story, you sort of feel like an observer.
Gotcha. Yeah, honestly, the story is what's interested me a ton about this game. Playing the two previous Digimon story games, you could tell that they were going for a bit more of a mature story. They were kind of fleshing things out. It wasn't it wasn't kind of a just thrown together story. There was some thought put in.
Yeah.
And the first thing I noticed playing the demo was how much more cinematic this game is than those previous two games. This one, the cutscenes feel very well done. Not just the CG cutscenes, but the in-game ones as well. There's a ton of voice acting in this game. I was shocked to find out how many of the actual Digimon had English voice acting. It feels like there's been a lot of production to go into it.
And it sort of translates well to the final game. Like, I think that demo is a good representative of what the full game is like. In general, I was like really impressed with like how well the English voices were. Because it's weird to realize, but I don't think the last one had English voices whatsoever.
I don't believe so either. I think it had mainly Japanese dub. And it was kind of like some cutscenes were dubbed, and I think some Digimon were dubbed, but not the majority of it was not.
Yeah, and this feels like they've taken the production value of what Bandai Namco is sort of striving to for the last number of years. Like, this feels also what they sort of did, for example, with, say, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot a few years ago. This feels like they applied it to the Digimon formula, where everything is lined out, everything is shown, everything is voiced, and there's more of a merit to it.
That's so nice to hear, honestly. It's funny, I was talking with a few people before about licensed video games when we were growing up and licensed video games now. And you talk about like Dragon Ball and Digimon, and seeing them get these very carefully crafted games that feel very well made now is so refreshing to games of the 2000s era, where it felt like you would just make a game just to sell some toys.
Yeah, it's a stark difference now. I think that's also sort of testament to how well Bandai Namco has been handling their properties now, especially like Digimon and Dragon Ball. I think they've done them so well justice. So it just keeps me wondering what they'll ever do next, because where do you go from here? Because this game is really packed, There's like 450 for different Digimon to choose from. And the thing is, they're not limiting you in how much you can collect. There's about 1,000 spaces in your inventory just to collect stuff. And the fact that they make it so broad and they make it so interesting in every given step. I would say, though, that it is, because you have so many options, it's a bit more on the harder side. So it's really made with like an adult RPG-loving audience in mind.
I can definitely tell that. Honestly, one thing I want to touch on that you mentioned is just the amount of Digimon in this game and the scope of it.
Yes.
when you beat the demo, you get to play in a. It doesn't carry over to your full save, but you get to play in a kind of city area that I assume
Yes.
that you go to fairly later on in the game. And
Yeah,
I
for
walked
sure.
around it and was stunned at how packed it was. Not just the volume
Yeah.
of Digimon around, but the variety. It wasn't just the same Digimon copy pasted. There were complete evolution lines. There were Digimon you recognized from
Mm.
every season of the anime, all over the place, crowded streets. It just really felt alive and just brimming with energy, which was something that was super refreshing to see in a JRPG.
Yeah, it feels lived in as well.
Hmm.
Like it feels like your straight off the mill cool RPG town. And it feels like they're also showing like a different part of the digital world because I don't know, with the last game before this, I felt like the colors are a bit less saturated and there was more of a um like one guide look, like one stream look.
Yeah,
Here, it feels like it goes to different places and scales, which adds to that volume of the game.
that's definitely something I've noticed with this game is the previous games, they every time you went into the digital world, it was a true digital world. Blues and
Yes.
whites and very cybernetic looking. And this game, it feels like the digital world we've seen from the shows where there are giant trees everywhere. There are these landscapes that look like traditional landscapes, but you can tell there are elements of a digital society woven in. There'll be cables running through the ground and things
Yes.
like that. It's a really cool aesthetic that I'm glad they decided to go for.
I think it's more so like the digital world a bit more realized in a bunch of different ways. Because it felt like with the last game, once again, they went for this very digital look and almost to an extent they did it on purpose. Here they felt like they toned that way back and just made it sure that it felt like a world where the Digimon actually lived in, which I think it adds so much. It makes it so much of a fun game to explore. Like it wouldn't necessarily call it like an open world game, but it's not necessarily also just corridor after corridor.
Right. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about, as you don't get too far into this in the demo. So Digimon is known
Yes.
it came from a virtual pet. It started as a virtual pet. So there's a lot of monster raising. I know in the previous games they had a Digi farm that kind of gave you some of those virtual pet training elements. Are there things in this game that are more akin to the actual kind of pet training of the Digimon series?
So it's not necessarily the pet training, unfortunately. I mean, you can interact with your Digimon and make it behave different ways, so it's not necessarily that, because the other side of it is still handled with more of a Digifarm type of element. And I think pretty much they still call it Digifarm. But there are definitely still moments where you interact more with your Digimon than you have in previous games.
Very nice. Yeah, that's great to hear.
I think one of the elements that I felt was a bit less next to the few things that I mentioned before. I don't necessarily like the music in this game.
Interesting, because the Digimon World games have been known to have some very catchy tunes, so that's a little disappointing to hear that it might have dropped off.
Yeah, it feels very techno-y, and I know why they did it. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand why they did it, but considering how different they made this game, I'm surprised how very lenient in the techno side the music still is.
Interesting.
If that makes sense at all.
So they still
Yeah.
go for that kind of digital sound, even if the landscapes are a little less digital looking, is kind of a feel?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite fit the tone of the situation.
I think it actually fits. Funny enough, it fits the real life parts better than the digital world parts.
Interesting.
Because you are in Shinjuku and Akihabara, which are in itself very digital focused like areas of Tokyo. So it does make total sense there. But necessarily for the battle themes and for the overall world themes, I think they were like just a bit lacking. Could have been just a tiny bit more.
Interesting. So you touch on the difference between the real world and the digital world. How often are you switching between the two? Is it you spend prolonged periods of time in the digital world and make your way back to the real world? Is it you're constantly going back and forth?
It feels like I'm back and forth. At some point, like it does lean more into the digital world than the real world. But there is that mystery going on that sort of looms over your head, which sort of forces your hand in some areas and forces you to go back and forth a little bit. And the fact that you can go back and forth is like a weird thing at all. I mean, it sort of resonates with like the old anime series, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, I mean, everything you've said so far has got me even more excited for this game. I can't wait for it to come out. Playing the previous ones in the series, I really thought they were on to something, and this game truly feels like where it's all been leading to, what it's all been culminating in, is a much bigger production.
Yes. I do think that this is sort of the step up moment for Digimon. Like, obviously, they still handle a lot of adult themes. Like, they do a lot of cool things with its world. You could say in some elements they do it above and beyond what an RPG of this scale should do. But that's what I sort of appreciate Digimon, right? It's trying to be something inherently different.
Which is great to see, because it's just so easy to make that comparison to Pokemon for a lot of people. I mean, the name in and of itself. And with that said, with that comparison, you know, I have a question. Is this the year of the quote unquote little brother? We've seen Sonic Cross Worlds give Mario Kart a run for its money. We're hearing great things about Battlefield giving Call of Duty a run for its money. Is Digimon gonna give Pokemon a run for its money this year?
Hard to say. I mean, they're both trying something completely different, right? Like you said, it's not really all too fair to compare to. Like with the other examples, there are more like steady comparisons because of the types of games that they are. To me, like Legend ZA will play nothing like Digimon Story Time Stranger, and vice versa as well. And I think it's far more fair to compare Digimon Time Stranger to actual like big RPGs, and I mean it as a compliment. Like, Pokemon is inherently a game meant with a smaller audience in mind. Like, we play it as adults and we still have fun, but there's an inherent difference between how Pokemon is handled and how Digimon is handled. Digimon is handled specifically more the last number of years with an adult audience in mind, and particularly with the themes they're handling. And I'll also look at like how they handled like recent animes. I do feel like they keep a close eye on what its current audience is. And I think that what Time Stranger does best is to respect that audience.
Definitely. I think that's one thing I've noticed with the Digimon series is they've truly grown up with their audience. It has felt like they know that their audience that was watching it as a kid and playing with the actual Digivices in the 2000s. They know that they have grown up and are in their 30s now, might have kids of their own. And they respect that while still, they're not taking it such a total tone shift. The Digimon anime had some darker moments. I think that's what drew a lot of people to it compared to the Pokemon anime. It was a little bit more teen oriented when it came out, and it doesn't feel like a tonal shift for them to be making this leap into a more serious hardcore JRPG aspect, because it kind of feels like that's the tone that Digimon has had in the background for a while.
100%. And I still have traumatic experiences of the end of Tamers. Don't ask me.
Tamers that's the anime that really did it for me. I think it was actually produced by some big name anime creators. I think the one who made a very serious show called Technolize. They might have worked on Serial Experiments Lane as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
we shouldn't go back too much into this. This is not particularly a Digimon only discussion, but yes, it is. I do think it respects its audience very much, and once again, complementary to it, it feels more like an adult RPG.
That's awesome to hear. yeah. Again, the more you talk about this game, the more excited I am. I can't wait to get in my hands and just dive in deep for hours.
Yeah, I specifically tried to avoid saying anything particular because I know, like, I want people like you to actually experience it because I think the story is actually really cool. Despite, once again, I do think that, like, it sometimes feels like the main character is a step back removed from what is actually happening, even though you're actively participating in it. But everything surrounding the game, including like the Digimon companions, including like the big one, which I forget the name always, the Pokemon, the Digimon that is inherent
or
to the story.
Aegiomon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Aegiomon. Yes.
I know this one. I think that's something we didn't touch on. Is there's some lore things with Digimon where I think traditionally Digimon is based off of a Norse mythology. I think like it's the Yggdrasil is like the ruler of the digital world, and this one is very Greek inspired.
Yeah. I feel it sort of comes across in some of the world design elements as well. I sort of saw it in the demo as well if you went to that adventure trial. I don't think it's that out of reach.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Good to hear. Well, I think that's it, everybody. Thanks for coming along. Very much appreciate it. Where can people find you, Zach?
You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You can find me at Zach Volpicelli. That's just my name, ZachVolpicelli. And every once in a while, you might find me here on GameXplain.
Nice. You can find me at Nintendo. That's NANTNDAAN. Thanks so much for watching, and keep it locked at GameXplain for more discussions like this. Bye.
Thanks, guys.